So to drill a little bit more into the tool and some of the things that go on there, EasyMonitor does 3 basic things: monitoring, optimization, and maintenance. And these are the core things you need to do to support whether you're going to do it manually or whether you're going to do it in an automated fashion. So from a monitoring perspective, you want to be looking at a few things. One is customized alerting. If you look at the DLA example, the Defense Department example, the reason why they were seeing problems was because they had just a simple ping. You need to be able to report if I have lower read rates, if I have applications on the readers that are failing, if I don't see reads in a period of time, and you want to be able to say, based on this set of data that I have, this is a problem. Because if I normally receive 500 reads in an hour on this particular conveyor, and all of a sudden I'm receiving 2, you know what, at least send someone an email and say, hey, you know, you've only received two reads. You may want to check this out. And it may be that they have that conveyor down for maintenance, and the guy says, oh, it's down for maintenance, it's not a problem. But it could be an early detection system that will really help you. One of the things that we found is also key is making sure you have a visual layout of where everything is. So if you have dock doors and conveyors and outdoor facilities, make sure you have your plan in a way that you can physically see where all the equipment is. Because when that guy calls up on the 380 final assembly line, he's not going to say, I'm reader IP address 176.132.2.1. He's going to say, I'm on the elevator at dock 6 on floor 2 on the left-hand side. And you want to have the people on the other end of the phone be able to quickly go and see, hey, I know which reader it is, I know what the configuration history is, I know that it's had problems or it hasn't had problems before, and keep that documentation set together. From an optimization perspective, there's really 2 things that you want to look out for. One of the hot topics, so if you look at 4 years ago, back in sort of the 2004 era, the problem was getting reads in the first place. And with things like metal mount tags and improvements in tags and readers, the problem is less so much getting the reads and more stray reads. So, for example, the customer that called up with different performance between winter and summer, their problem was not that they weren't getting the reads when it was really humid and hot, but the problem was when it was cold and dry, they were reading from all over the place. So eliminating stray reads, particularly in dense reader environments, you want to be able to do in a systematic perspective. And what we do in our tool is we detect that by laying out portals and automatically figuring out, based on the read patterns, where that read actually is. Is it in portal A or portal B? So before the read ever gets to the middleware, you know, hey, this read isn't over in portal 2, it's over in portal 1. And then from a maintenance perspective, you want to have things like being able to update firmware automatically across readers. So if you're in a multi-reader environment, if you're Shaw Industries, for example, and you have 40 different readers dispersed, you don't want to send people to 40 different sites across the country. But B, if you've got people running symbol readers and intermec readers and alien readers and pinch readers, you have 4 different update methods. On symbol, you have to set up an FTP server. On intermec, you have to set up an OSGI server. I'm sorry, you have to use OSGI to update the firmware. And you want to have some sort of consistency in your methods. And then the last thing is being able to hot swap the readers. So this is what we had talked about earlier, where if you make a configuration change, or if a reader dies, you want to be able to unplug a reader and plug a new one in. So from an EasyMonitor perspective, what we're doing is 3 things. First is, for some reason the slides are 40. From a monitoring perspective, creating faster issue resolution. So you can manually do these documents, you can manually create the diagnostic trees, set up your help desk and set up remedy, for example. But if you have everything in one place, you have the ability to do very fast issue resolution, and you can support remotely all over the world. The key difference that RFID does to your IT infrastructure is if you look at the way you deploy servers. Servers and RFID readers are, in effect, the same thing. In fact, you look at an RFID reader and it's a little Linux machine or it's a little Windows machine. The only difference is you would never put a Linux server out on the warehouse floor. You'd always put it in an air-conditioned room, and you'd have good network connectivity to it. So you want to be able to remotely support these things and remotely detect errors. From an optimization perspective, you want to remove the downtime as much as possible, because if people think RFID doesn't work, you're going to kill your SLAs and you're going to kill the confidence in the system, which it doesn't matter how great your business case is, the second or third time that thing fails, the system will be declared dead. And then you want to make sure you have high read rates. From a maintenance perspective, you want to make sure that you can very quickly update firmware and reduce your support costs. So what we do is we look at the system as really a life cycle. We start with planning of the RFID system and looking at how do I look at the topology, lay readers on top of my topology, my floor plan, and how do I also put the other components in, whether it's racks, readers, antennas, cabling, configurations, all those kinds of things. I then need to track my procurement. After I buy these things, I want to certify the readers. One of the things we've seen, it's gotten better, but as we order, for example, 700 or 800 readers at a time, you'll see batches where as much as 30% of a particular batch of readers may be underperforming. And if you go out and you deploy in the field, and the power port number 3 is only putting out 80% of the power, and sure enough you need 100% of the power, that's something you want to know, and it's something you want to store centrally so that way, A, I can either return the reader before I deploy it, because it's a place where I'm going to need high performance, or boy, I'm going to waste a lot of time on site deploying. So we install, tune, and then support. The way that we like to work with things is using a couple of unique technologies. The first is software as a service. So we have a centralized server. Let's try it. I'm not sure why it's doing this, but that's okay. A centralized server that harvests all of my read information. So what I can do is as the readers are reading, it knows what my read rates look like. It knows how long the system is up. And then on-site itself there's a peer-to-peer network. So all the different readers are talking to each other, which allows me to do a few things. First of all, if you're eliminating crosstalk, the only way to do it is in a low latency network. And rather than trying to add more and more network infrastructure, what I want to do instead is use the smarts of the readers themselves to solve the problems of the reader. Because what that allows you to do is scale your reader infrastructure by just adding readers. I don't need to add servers, I don't need to add switches. I just say, hey, if I want to put 50 dock doors, I put in 50 readers. If I want to put in 20 dock doors, I put in 20 readers. I don't say, well, 20 dock doors is 4 servers, and 30 dock doors is 6 servers, and scale up from there. So from an architecture perspective, we're looking at 2 things. One is that it's software as a service, so that way we don't need to add servers to the edge. This is particularly important as you start to support multi-geography locations. So if you're looking at Europe, you're looking at South America, you're looking at the US, or you're even looking across the US at multiple sites, if you don't have a data center at every site, you want to be able to support global deployments from one location. The other thing is I have role-based access. So as I start to roll out to my administrators on the site, I can give my help desk access to see all of the performance on all of my sites. But if I have a distribution center out in Texas, for example, with 5 readers, you want your site contacts there to only be able to see their readers. So you can log in as a site person, see your readers, and do what you need to do. And then, of course, authenticate using your normal method, LDAP, and also integrate to your back end like Tivoli or NetCenter.